This is Miller Philosopher. Let's be honest here. Studios will keep making Lord of the Rings movies, and just like Star Wars, once a franchise becomes a cultural pillar, the machine just basically keeps turning out stuff, whether the stories are ready or not, whether they're art or not. And I think if they're going to keep mining Middle-earth, then the next trilogy needs to be worthy of Tolkien's themes, and not another attempt by directors or studios to try to improve on an already successful author or trying to make their own mark in the industry. So today I'm giving you my pitch for the only story that I think that deserves to be the next Lord of the Rings trilogy, the Angmar Wars. The Rise of the Witch King, the Fall of Arnor, and the shadowed history that shaped Aragorn's entire lineage. And trust me, it has everything you want. The Angmar Wars were already hinted at in the original trilogy, number 1. Aragorn comes from a fallen kingdom, so ancient that most people think its peoples are legends and myths. And that mystery is a gift. It's cinematic gold and it's barely been touched. It's within the copyrights. The trilogy will basically explore the fall of Arnor and the internal rivalries that basically broke it apart, the Witch King's true origins as a terror that even Gandalf the White hesitated to face in Return of the King, the long and slow erosion of the Dunedain, and seeing a stronger Gondor and Rivendell, which allows for legitimate use of Lord of the Rings tropes like hobbits and elves. And finally, the final transformation of the survivors of the Angmar Wars into the Rangers that we meet in Lord of the Rings. This will basically introduce Tolkien's darker stories that only lore fans know about, but the mainstream people generally don't. And I think because of that, they will eat this up. However, there's one big problem that all Lord of the Rings adaptations have run into: time compression. Because, as fans know, Tolkien was quite fond of writing stories that take place over thousands of years. Rings of Power tried to squeeze thousands of years into a few decades across 3 to 5 seasons. Even the original trilogy had to compress Gandalf's 17-year investigation of the One Ring into what basically feels like a long weekend. And the Angmar Wars span over 1,000 years. So how would you adapt that without breaking the story? Or without breaking the themes so that it seemed like a cash grab? The answer? You do it the way the Apple TV series Foundation did it. A story similar to Tolkien in that it covers thousands upon thousands of years of history to tell its story across many different characters. And the Angmar Wars trilogy can do something similar, just in the movie format. You see, each movie would cover a different era of the wars. And on top of all that, it would be an inverse of the original trilogy. Its dark mirror, if you will. Movie 1, The Fall of Arnor. The first film would open up in the Third Age year of 861, with Arnor still being United Kingdom, but now in decline. And this is where we would show basically Arnor's connection to the Last Alliance with Gondor, and its decay basically into the 3 fractured realms ruled by rival princes. Think House of the Dragon, but no dragons. Sorry, Smaug. Political tension, dynastic pride, and a kingdom that was too proud to see that it was setting itself up for future failure. And if you really need your big Lord of the Rings style battle, it would go basically at the conclusion of this film, with a civil war moment that cements the division into the smaller kingdoms of Arthedain, Cardolan, and Rudar. And that signals the North will never be whole again. And your apology is going to be the appearance of the Witch King, either watching or beginning to set up Angmar. Movie 2, The Shadow of Angmar. From this point, we would do a time jump to the year 1300. You will definitely have to do a time compression here, but this would basically cover the introduction of the Witch King and the Kingdom of Angmar, probably through a series of losing battles for the Dunedain to introduce the start of the Long Wars and trouble starting. And this is also where you would introduce the Noldor of Rivendell fighting against Angmar, again showing a weak faction from the Lord of the Rings trilogy as a much more powerful force. And this film is going to be your dark middle chapter, your Two Towers inversion. Key beats being the fall of Amon Sul, or Weathertop, as a dark mirror of the Battle of Helm's Deep, as well as the Noldor assault on Angmar, echoing the Ents at Isengard, and displaying for the first time why the Witch King was such a threat. Not just a Nazgul, but a strategist, a conqueror, and a terror that starts to reshape the North and is not to be fucked with. This is where the Witch King will earn his moniker and cement the darker tone of the trilogy. Movie 3, The Last Kingdom of the North. The final film would open with a prologue of the centuries of warfare that followed after the second film, and the Great Plague that wipes out a good portion of the Dunedain of the North. This would be the darkest chapter of the trilogy, covering the fall of Cardolan, Arthurnine's desperate plea for Gondor to come to their aid, and finally, the last stand of the North against Angmar and the death of the last king of the North. But it would also balance out with hope. We would finally see a powerful Gondor at the height of its power, not the weak shadow of itself on the verge of annihilation that we saw in Return of the King. And we would also again see a powerful elven army post-Second Age, and why the elves were generally respected by Gondor as both forces converge to break Angmar once and for all after the fall of the Northern Kingdom. The Witch King would be defeated, though not destroyed, and thereby establishing the quote that the Witch King would not fall by the hand of a man, and we would see him flee south to set up his future endeavors as the Lord of the Nazgul. With an epilogue that would show the surviving Dunedain becoming rangers and how their chieftains came to be raised in Rivendell to protect the royal line. And Gondor would be shown still proud, still mighty, though fighting its own wars and beginning its own slow decline, though slower than their northern cousins. This ending would tie directly into Aragorn's story and gives the emotional weight to the Rangers' hidden legacy that the original trilogy couldn't really go into. The closing of this trilogy would honor Tolkien's themes, satisfy hardcore Lord fans, and give general audiences a fresh but at the same time familiar Middle-earth experience. And that is why that this is the story that should be told next, and one that could live up to the actual legacy of the original trilogy. But if you think differently, or if you think that the movie should just stop entirely, or if you have a third option that I'm not mentioning, feel free to comment below. This is Miller Philosopher, and you guys have a good day.